We have to delete this and officially start the podcast.
He can't hear us, Chris, so hold on.
Oh, okay.
He's got to do his audio.
There we
You there, Gordon?
I'm here. Yep.
Oh, nice.
Here. Sweet.
All right.
Got it going. What's up, man?
How you been, buddy?
Cooped up, but otherwise pretty well.
Good.
How about yourself?
I've been busy. Well, we were, and now we got nothing to do, so we started a podcast. So let me roll everything kind of back real quick. I'll make the introductions, tell everybody our history and why Gordon is here. So John Laxlosi, a good friend of mine, has been doing broadcasting of games in the area for ESPN, ESPN Plus, whenever there's a Detroit Mercy game. Culver's playing Hill in the area. Losi's the guy on the call. He's got kids, boys and girls that have played through the Brother Rice and Warriors programs, all that kind of stuff. Chris Colin played against me in high school and has been a friend of mine in lacrosse for years, played at Rutgers, now the head coach at Detroit Mercy, and continues to be involved in the PLL. He was one of the last year he was one of the first coaches in the league with the Atlas. So these are my buddies. We started this podcast and said specifically we're going to talk Michigan lacrosse and only to people from Michigan or that play in Michigan or that coach in Michigan. And then this happened. And I said, well, Gordon reached out to me. So, Chris and John, I'll give you my quick introduction on Gordon. Gordon was a official down in the Atlanta area who started really taking to doing podcast kind of stuff, video stuff, officials education stuff like this. Next thing you know, he's in Baltimore doing officials training for U.S. Lacrosse. 2 years ago in 2018, when I went down to Ohio State for my Laredo, and for people that don't know what that is, it's the Lacrosse Referees Development opportunities. We go to camps. It used to be the Wolverine War Camp in Ann Arbor that JP used to have, was a Laredo. Well, this one down at Ohio State, they send down 4 or 5 clinicians. You do a couple games a day. You get observed. You get instant feedback. It's a fantastic experience for officials. And Gordon was there as one of my clinicians and one of my trainers and became friends through this thing. And actually, the first time I went to a Laredo down in Ann Arbor, his buddy down in Atlanta, Jeremy Redmond, was my roommate there. So I've kind of always had this officials knowledge of Jeremy and Gordon and what Gordon's done with U.S. Lacrosse. So the reason why he's here today is anyone that gets U.S. Lacrosse magazine, I just got my new issue today, probably saw an article about Gordon about a year and a half ago, 12 months ago.
Just about.
Yeah. Do you want me to introduce it? Do you want to introduce it? How do you want to?
Oh no, I'd love to hear your intro on it. By all means.
Sure. So
I'll say how you did your homework.
Well, it's easy when it's somebody you've known for years and somebody that you love and respect. So, Gordon's my clinician down there, and there's this fine line between we're all adults and we're all down there to be professional, but at the same time, the clinicians can really make your lives
Swearing.
or you're not
Swearing.
Language.
Yeah,
Language.
I'll bleep that one out.
Wait a sec.
I finally broke my own
we're
rule.
the ones that everyone's concerned about swearing. But I got to tell you, last 2 podcasts, I'm just saying.
Wow.
You have the foulest mouths of them all. We just don't say it.
Yeah, yeah. So, with Gordon and I down there, we had a clinician, a camper, whatever we were called, relationship, which was very professional. But we got to be buddies, similar age, both in the same thing. And there were a couple interactions we had where we were getting to know each other, where you said a couple things that just made me go, huh, that's interesting. Gordon has a lot of tattoos, and we were talking about covering up our tattoos for NCAA games and whether or not we had to. And he has, I think it's on his arm, the Johnny Walker Scotch logo that says, "Keep walking." Yeah.
There you go.
And I said to him, well, I really like whiskey too, but I've never liked Scotch so much that I got the tattoo on me. And he goes, actually, I don't drink. I go, really? And why do you have a Scotch tattoo? He goes, just keep walking. He goes, yeah, booze doesn't mix well with a whole series of depression and antidepressants and exercise and stuff. So yeah, it's a tattoo that means a lot to me, but I don't drink. And so I just chalked it up as, oh, this guy doesn't drink anymore. Okay, that's cool. And he mentioned whatever. So then, past my Laredo, had all that stuff happen, come home and get my issue of Lacrosse magazine, and I'm going to share my screen, and I see my buddy, pre-beard, on the cover. And there's an article there talking about Gordon and his history in lacrosse and dealing with depression, dealing with suicide, dealing with a whole series of life events, and how to this day, lacrosse and his friendships and his relationships and really making it work. And down here, as far as his stuff that he talks about with exercise and yoga and meditation and vitamins and no alcohol and journaling and all this stuff, as well as family support, friend support, everything else, he opened up to the public to kind of break down the walls of the stigma of depression and some of the stuff that it's okay to talk about this. And so I reached out to Gordon, I think through Facebook Messenger with, I'm going to catch my language before I say it, but whatever words I used to say, buddy, dude, I had no idea. And you went, yeah, I didn't really share it with many people, but now is the time. And at that time, he was going to start Mental Agility, which would be public speaking and coaching for people talking about mental illness, mental health, depression, sports officiating, a whole series of stuff. So we've talked on this podcast several times over the first 6 episodes about how are the kids doing? How are the coaches doing? How are we doing being trapped in our houses with our kids, our families, not seeing our teammates, not going to games, not sitting on bar stools with our buddies after the games? It's not, it's not normal. And so when Gordon reached out to me and said, hey, nice podcast, I like it. You want a guest? I said, I'll break the rule and the first and probably only non-Michigan guest because it's so appropriate and I've got so much respect for Gordon and I think people want to hear what he has to say. So that's 6 to 8 minutes of me talking in a row. I'd like to come up for a breath of air and see, Gordon, did I get that right? Did I miss anything out? Did I insult you on anything?
No, man. You hit all the high notes, and it was funny. I was on. First of all, gentlemen, pleasure to at least be able to know you digitally, especially through Chris. Like you said, he and I have gone back the last couple of years and developed from more just a professional working relationship to just two guys who care about each other, love the game, and want to see things go well. Thanks for throwing my website up there. So yeah, what I'm doing now is this is my second career. What I'm looking to do is to build mental agility either through interviews, through writing, through doing videos, through doing speeches, workshops, whatever, to coaches, to parents, to players, to students, high schools, middle schools, not really elementary schools because it's fairly heavy topics, but effectively teaching kids is what I'm most passionate about. How to manage their mind a little bit more effectively. And especially because I have the bent of being a former athlete, now still current athlete as a referee, still trying to maintain that on the field. But really it's to, my big passion is to teach kids all the lessons that I didn't learn when I was in high school and when I was in college, and navigating the different environments of those, navigating the challenges of playing and practicing while also having a mental illness and a significant bent unhealthily for perfectionism, and how that impacted how I enjoyed the game, how I viewed the game for a while, and ultimately how I found officiating. And strangely enough, it's the officiating piece that kind of all the buttons, all the boxes got checked. And it's the best thing in the world for my mental health. One of my favorite quotes is by a guy named Mike Leiner, who was an SEC championship official in the 80s. And he said, referees are expected to start off perfect and improve from there. So there's not a lot of wiggle room to get to really, yeah. But the weird thing is on that one, and I'll give this one of our other clinicians, Jim Carbonneau, who's been a huge mentor and great friend to me. He's gone all over the country training officials and a huge ambassador for the game. mentality as a referee. He goes, Gordon, we're always going to our field. You know, it's the players' field, but it's always a home game for the refs, right? If you can make that mentality, and in that way, you're never going to lose. You're always going to have, as long as you're giving that 100% effort, wherever you go, that's your home game, and you do the game right as best you can. And that always, since then, has been a reminder to me to give my best effort, but also to keep me from getting too wound up and getting every single possible thing right, or getting too focused on the minutia that I lose the bigger picture of keeping the kids safe and the game fair and fun. And from when I was a player, I didn't learn that. I was too stuck on the individual parts of it and my performance only, as opposed to how I interacted with teammates and now with crewmates, and how I evaluated my performance. And that caused a lot of mental angst. And it got worse as I got older. And fortunately, I've had a lot of great therapeutic relationships, both individually and in group, that I'm at a spot now where I get to share that and do these things with coaches and hopefully share a little bit about kind of just how the brain works, how it's developing, why kids do the weird things that they do, which are weird to us, but it's that whole bit of youth is wasted on the young, right? So we get we get a little perplexed by the decisions they make or the stuff that they get worried about. But if we can understand a little bit more about why the brain operates, I think we can coach kids a lot better. And one of the weirdest things that I've been hearing is I was asked to come to a coaches conference probably towards the tail end of the summer, if things still continue or get better. Hopefully they do. Where a lot of coaches are starting to feel like counselors and they don't know where to go. Or what way to help out a kid with anxiety or depression, or saying, hey, coach, I don't think I want to be here anymore. Like those types of heavy things, like what do you do? And so that's what I'm trying to do with mental agility and with my story. And very grateful that Chris decided to break his rule. And I'm very, very excited to talk to you all and answer what questions I can and see where this conversation goes.
We've got we've got a community on Twitter of lacrosse coaches, officials, dads in the Detroit area, in the whole state of Michigan. And there's been a lot of dialogue back and forth about, well, if the season starts on this day, what does it mean? Or what happens if we cancel the season? What would the MHSAA allow us to do? And, I say this, and again, this is editorial content. This is Chris and John and Chris, just three buddies, spitballing ideas. We've had some people make comments like, don't try to give people false hope, or, well, this isn't fair. Or, if it's, we don't know what the right answer is for these kids. And we don't want to come out and say we're the experts. We don't want to come out and say, we know exactly what's best for them. But what I know I'm trying to do is every time I talk to a coach, how you doing? How are your kids doing? Because, like Gordon said, when I go out and I ref, for 2 hours or whatever, I'm going to get screamed at and I'm going to get this and that and everything else. But you know what I'm not worried about for those 2 hours? Bills, taxes, sales, quotas, kids, insurance. I get to get on the field and I get to go do that after the game. We go out, we talk about the calls we made, the calls we hypothetically they thought we missed. We see everything. But, that the more I thought about what you've said about it, the more I agreed that is a place for me, for therapy, for exercise, for everything. How are you personally doing with the lack of lacrosse right now? Are you supplementing that with Peloton bikes, or are you, throwing flags at the TV for Madden 95? What are you doing?
That's a good idea. Actually, that's not bad. I think I'm going to have to call it Bloody Thursday when we got the news that the Ivy League was canceling, and then once I got that news from one of my friends, I was like, the dominoes are going to fall.
Yeah.
And if colleges are doing this, then there's no way that high schools are going to keep this going. And Georgia was interesting. We were 3 weeks into the high school season. Like, I had done 20-odd games and some college games even, and then all of a sudden, I got a couple dozen emails saying like all my games got unassigned an arbiter, and I'm left here going, well, what do I do with my weekends? Especially because this was something I was looking forward to I was in a treatment protocol for about a good 90 days through November through January, and this was my thing. I was like, yeah, I'll get back into normal life and get back into refereeing and see all my buddies, and all this socializing is going to be good for me. I'll be outdoors. I'll be running around.
Yeah.
And now it's gone. and everyone's kind of joking with me, just like, oh, but Gordon, you're an introverted guy. Like you're prepared for this. And I'm like, in a sense, sure. Like but the thing is like introverts like people too. We just like them in smaller amounts. And so things like this type of connection, being able to speak with lacrosse fans and guys that are passionate about the same thing, this is huge, just for my overall mental well-being, number one. But for what I've been supplementing with, I've been going for walks and jogs and sitting and watching the river. I live by the Chattahoochee. I've been listening. Routine was I drive to the office and I'd listen to a couple of chapters. Now I don't do that, so I just listen to that in my apartment, or I'll put on my earbuds and go for a walk and listen for a bit. It's trying to navigate this new normal, which is hard enough for an adult. I can't imagine how I would be navigating this as a teenager, especially a teenager now. And to have just the disappointment of like for our high school kids in Atlanta, the season's just gone. Like there may be something at the very tail end if a lot of things line up. I'm personally looking at it as if something happens, cool, great. I'm not expecting it to for how things are going. I mean, they've closed schools through like the start of May, so we're not going to have a lot of season left by that point. And for other areas of the country where you're just like, I don't know. It's that level of the brain just hates uncertainty. We prefer, I think it goes, we prefer the certainty of misery as opposed to the misery of uncertainty, which tracks very true in my life. Is that the things where I don't know what the outcome is going to be, or not having an answer, the brain doesn't like that, and especially a developing brain for a young kid, it's tough to process, and it's tough to feel like it's like, oh, the world is just ended, because in a sense the thing that's biggest to them has, we still have, we got to bring in money for the bills and whatnot, and we got stuff to kind of, but that kid who's just now is doing some online classes and doesn't have practice anymore, doesn't have his or her friends, I really can't imagine that type of, just having it cut off like that. It's brutal.
Yeah, really, it's that structure. It's that, you talk about it's logic, right? I mean, the brain is, we've conditioned our kids and our youth these days of, here's your schedule, right? And we fill them with so much, right? I mean, that's one of the things that, as I look at this in the whole landscape, when this first all shook out, I said, this really is allowing families to sit down at the dinner table together and eat together.
Yeah.
And really to reconnect, because if you've got multiple kids in athletics, as everybody knows, they're going, and parents are dividing and conquering, and no one is ever in the same spot at the same time. And so now it's like everyone's here. And so while it is structure, it's not the structure that we've kind of created with them. And it's difficult logically for the kids to sit there and go, well, what am I going to do tomorrow? Well, what about the weekend? Wait, I can't do that. And it's just hard. I can see it in my own kids.
Sure.
Yeah. We sat down for family lunch today, and I looked at my wife and I'm like, Amory, have we ever sat down for family lunch on a weekday? Like, this is just so unique. And I think my 4.5-year-old has seen more of Daddy in the last 2 weeks than she did in the previous 2 months. But, I'm trying to treasure it and value it. I keep going back to, asking Colin how his team's doing and how his guys are doing. He always says he's got a tough group of kids. If you play Division I lacrosse, you've got some thick skin. You've invested in that. This is a full-time job in addition to being a student. And kids at Detroit understand it's going to be long bus rides, and it might not be the I'm not going to crap all over your program, Chris, but it's not the luxuries of the Ivy or the ACC in some cases. But I do worry about, especially as we were talking today on Twitter, Losi and I, some people, is, that kid that this is my senior year. I've been playing with these guys since 5th grade. I'm the captain this year. This is my year to shine. And a week before practice starts, uncertainty. or maybe nothing. Do you have any advice for what those kids can do? And I go back to your your mental agility and your article on some of the things that they can do as far as yoga, as far as talking, as far as journaling. I don't want to make it sound like this is a group therapy session for every high school player in Michigan. And I don't want to make it sound like we've brought you in as a paid consultant to do counseling, consulting, therapy, even though that's what you do for a living. But I'm sure there's some things that you can point out.
I'll be as clear as I can be on this end. I am, number one, not a doctor. Number two, not a trained health professional in therapy or psychoanalysis or psychotherapy. What I do, that's ultimately what I want to be, is a trained therapist. That's my long-term professional goal. But that is not what I am now. So what I offer, and Chris knows this in my years with U.S. Lacrosse, is I've got a base of educational knowledge, of knowing how people think and how to present information in a way that is pretty digestible depending on the audience. Like, I'm not going to teach, this group about the brain in the same way I teach an 8th grader. So we got to approach the audiences in the right way. But the other thing is, I've developed a lot of lived experience, and I've taken a very extreme amount of behavior in severe depression and suicidality, and I've survived it because of the people in my life and because of all these skills. And they are skills. It feels a lot like common sense for whatever reason, but these are things, when I talk about emotional intelligence, or I talk about being able to check in with how you feel on a regular basis all day, and not just saying I'm fine to yourself, let alone to somebody else. These are things that we kind of expect kids to just learn as they go, and they'll just learn to be developed. And they can lead to better overall team cohesion, but they lead to an overall better quality of life and a better relationship with yourself. That's kind of my big thing. So for somebody who's, I feel for these seniors. It's brutal. It's the only way to put that on that one. And to, especially for those guys who maybe, I can't imagine. I really even didn't think about the guys who hadn't even started playing yet. I thought it's like I was just used to everybody going. I'm like, to prepare all that way.
We had 1 week, or not even a week. We had 3 days. We had tryouts. Most of the schools had tryouts the first couple of days. You can't have any contests in Michigan until the first weekend. And so we were 3 days in. 3 days in. And
I think I read one story where I forget the program, but it was a women's program that 2 days before what was going to be their last game, they just decided to scrimmage just so the seniors could have one more game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that hit me like a gut punch. That's just, ooh.
And the boys team showed up in the stands and they cheered and they did the whole thing. Yeah, I saw that on social media. That was neat.
It was Brown.
Yeah, it was Brown. That's what it was. Yep. Thank you for that one. It's I think the key thing here is so mental agility. I give you the short story as to why I picked that name. I love mental toughness and I love grit. And I think there's a limit to where that takes an individual, because that's what I tried to do. I tried to white knuckle most of my youth and adult life, and try to force my way through every difficulty. The reason I picked mental agility is because when I was younger, I used to kickbox all through my teenage years, kickbox and jiu-jitsu. And my head instructor, a guy named Stevie B, who was a beat cop in the city of Atlanta, and he had seen some stuff. And he had been in some scraps, and this guy knew his stuff when it came to teaching somebody kickboxing. And he would take 16-year-old me and just beat me senseless.
Wow.
And it would be, and I learned eventually. But his other thing was, he'd punch me a couple times in the face, and then he'd go, "Gordon, are you ever going to move?" I'm like, oh. And so then I started learning how to bob and weave a little bit and cover up a hand fit, when to be defensive, when
protect yourself. Yeah.
And the whole bit of being just kind of in that, like thinking, fighting, but you can't just always go in a straight line. So my idea with mental agility, especially as I speak to athletes and coaches, is let's take and exercise your most complex physical organ in a way so you can think faster under pressure. And not just in a game situation, but the pressure that is daily. Anybody connected with the game, but the kids especially, is this is going to be a period of chronic stress for them, and it's to recognize that it just is, right. It's a chronic stress for us. There's going to be a lot that is just weighing on us, and it's important, I think, just to recognize that, to state that as a fact, and then be able to move into, okay, so what can you do? What else in your life are you passionate about other than lacrosse? Like for me, it's writing. That's my cathartic thing. That's what I like to do. But another thing that I genuinely enjoy doing is reading and gaming. Like that. Those are things where, like, you take them. I can certainly isolate myself and just do one of those things or none of them, and that's bad. Or I can get a little bit throughout the day. Like today, I made a mix of exercise, mix of walking around, mix of listening to music, cooking, whatever. All these different things that I have these passions for. They're not as great as lacrosse. Like that's way up here. But I can't get up there anymore. So it's how can I raise that standard of all these other things, and it's by practicing them more. And maybe even fun. Like I'm considering trying to see if I'm just going to like pick up a musical instrument and see. I'm horrible with music. Like I got no freaking clue. But at the very least, this can give somebody looking. So
Yeah.
So-
Go ahead, Chris.
No, John, go.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a couple points. And I was taking some notes. You talk about, and really what kind of you're going towards, and what I told my kids at the beginning of this, I said, this is, with every piece of adversity, because adversity is going to affect everyone in life, no matter what you are. And you think you're tough until life hits you in the mouth, as Mike Tyson said. Mm-hmm. And, I try to get my kids to look at this as an opportunity, right? I mean, you got an opportunity here to see something different, or to try something different, or do something that you wouldn't have the opportunity to do before. And so that's one piece as you talk about gaming or an instrument. I'm like, hey, you want to learn a new language? I'll do it with you. Let's try and do something that way, and really go down that path. And then the second thing that you had mentioned during where you're talking there is really the art of loving yourself, right? And that is so, because I mean, and I could spend 2 hours with you with what I've gone through in my life at 49. I've had a kind of a reawakening at 49 years old, really being down in that depressive state, making bad decisions and just not being able to correct myself. But I was able to get out of it, and now, I see these things of loving yourself, right? I mean, that's the goal, and you have to do it every day, right? This isn't a do it for 3 days, get better, then move on. It's a practice. So everything that you do, full well is every day you got to do it.
It absolutely is. And it was another tidbit I picked up of saying it's just the fortunate thing is that, you're the longest serving relationship you're ever going to be in is with yourself, but you can never escape yourself. And I've got the additional bit of, I can't ever escape my depression. So I had to turn around the way in which I viewed that relationship with the own part of what I like to jokingly refer to as the defective part of my mind, is how can I use this? How can I find a way it's just an opponent. Okay, so in the same way that I used to break down how I would, watch film on an attackman, because I used to play close D, or when we're doing just overall scouting film, and we're going to break down the weaknesses of their timing and their slides, and what they usually do in this situation, and we're going to push them in this one, and nobody's a lefty on that team, so great, we're going to lock down hard, to how can we just treat this lack of a lacrosse season or severely shortened season. It's going to be different no matter what. How can we treat that as an opponent, and externalize that, as opposed to just bringing that inside ourselves and just like, I don't have lacrosse, I can't do anything.
Oh, I do, yeah.
Gordon, I got a couple points for you. First thing, thanks so much for that article that you wrote, and thanks for all that you're doing with this stuff. I think it's pretty awesome. As a personal, I chase my own demons all the time and work on that by the grace of having nice parents and a couple good girlfriends and a wonderful wife. I was pretty lucky.
Not all at the
to
same
kind of
time,
figure
though.
thing.
Not all at the same time.
Yeah.
That sounded weird, Chris. That sounded weird. That sounded weird. I got a couple girlforends and I got a wife.
No, I'm not the Tiger King or whatever that guy is, the doc guy. I'm not that guy. But I'm saying throughout a fortunate time, I've been pretty fortunate to have people in my life that were pretty supportive and let me figure out stuff as you had a good friend in your story. Got a book for you real quick. I just started it. Gordon, you see it?
The Brain That Changes Its. Who's the author on that one? That looks good.
Yeah, I think Norman Dodgy. I don't even know. I think for a guy that the stuff that you're into, I think.
Yeah, that's right up my alley. Ooh, that's going on the Kindle. All right.
Yeah. I started about 3 weeks before this all started, so it's just kind of an interesting thing. What Chris said, I don't want to come off like a jerk and saying that I'm insensitive to my Detroit guys that they can just handle it. That's not what I meant with that. What I meant with that is, when you say lacrosse is taken away from you, lacrosse has not been taken away from anybody. It's just been changed a little bit, right? So,
well said.
maybe our games have been taken away, and I look at games as entertainment. I don't look at that as the real work in lacrosse and what lacrosse really means and what it's really about. It sounds that's kind of where you're going with what you're doing. The everyday of lacrosse, while it's different now, we can still have it. That's why I find it so awesome that, some guys like Kyle Hartzell, some guys are giving him junk because he's putting so much stuff on the internet, but that guy's putting in work and doing stuff that, on his own, and that's lacrosse. And he's hopefully inspiring other people to do lacrosse in whatever way. I mean, this is lacrosse, right? It might not be on the field, but this is lacrosse. So that's our guys at Detroit. We spend a lot of time on the mental game and our our emotional intelligence and our through our brand and some of the stuff that we do through Dr. Don Apollo is a guy that helps us out a ton on what it really means to be a student athlete, what it really means. So I like what you're doing, and I love all that stuff. And I hope people get a better idea that while games and structured stuff might be gone, lacrosse is not gone. That structured stuff will come back. And we just kind of have to redefine for right now what that means. So with that kind of long diatribe of what I just said, what do you think? I love that. I mean, I've gotten through this with just boom, switching up my schedule. I do all the same. When I saw your schedule in your article, I mean, we're all physical people, so we need to keep our brain chemistry right. We need that physical thing. I picked up a steel mace for the first time ever. Trying to do stuff with that stuff on my own. Again, I was doing boxing with Coach Hicks every day or 3 times a week, and now that's gone. So we had to kind of figure out what we're doing with that. What are some of the strategies that people could do right now, kids could do right now, whether they're seniors in high school, freshmen, 8th graders, whatever the situation is, to kind of get through this scenario that we're in, and still have lacrosse?
Yeah, well, I mean, the benefit of living in, first off, just beautifully said in your earlier diatribe, or I say soliloquy. That was lovely.
So whatever that means.
I like that. It's a good mentality to keep. But for having to deal with this change I'm a planner by nature. That's just what I do. I'm a big data hound, and but that's not really how the human brain likes to operate. It likes to operate with stories, and it likes to operate with the story that you're telling yourself. Like you just gave a great example of how to change the story of lacrosse isn't gone. It's just changed. It's the one facet of this whole experience has changed. The rest of it, the practicing, individual practicing at the very least. I saw a video of 2 kids 12 feet apart on water rafts throwing at one another just to get some repetitions in, but like the wall isn't going anywhere. So that's always an option. I think that the key thing here is twofold. And the same thing that you would have to do for an entire team, just boiled down to the individual, is you need to write this stuff down and put it clearly in front of you where you're going to see this every single day, where you're going to be reminded of what it is you want to do. So on my In my bedroom, I've got a whiteboard wall, and I've just got on there a couple of tidbits of things to keep me where I want to be. Like I've been just dealing with a lot of rush. So I'm like, slow it down a notch, pace, effort, just, do the little things right in small batches and let those build up. That's kind of the mentality I've been working to craft these last few months. But I also have my list of kind of non-negotiables for the day. And I call them non-negotiables, but I negotiate with them. If I do 3 of the 5, I've considered it a good day. So I'm going to exercise, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to read, I'm going to write, and I'm going to get outside. So of those 5, as long as I get 3 of them, I don't care what. If I get all 5, awesome, great day. If I get 2,
Gordon, you've got your daily tool bag on your mental
I got a chance
the article. I'm sorry, you were freezing. You've got your tool bag on the article. Do you want me to put that on the screen and share that?
Yeah, go for it. So the
Gordon,
tool
do
bag,
you journal every day?
Almost. My blog's turned into the journal in a sense, mainly because I like to type more than I like to physically write stuff out. So that's kind of turned into that. I do a gratitude journal every morning. So my coffee.
And you share that?
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting. I do. I'm a big journal. I started journaling about 2.5 years ago. Dr. Dom was actually the guy who got me to start doing it.
Good.
And from a professional, personal, spiritual, psychological, that 20 minutes a day has been incredibly fulfilling for me. It's helped me remember things in tough situations for what the situation really was. It's helped me. I don't even. It's just incredible. And so that's the funny thing is through this whole thing, that's the only thing that I haven't been able to get back on a schedule of doing because it was such a. I don't know. That's the one thing I've been missing out that I need to get better at as this elongates out. But I think everybody should do that.
Yeah.
I think everybody should do it.
So it's interesting. So I've been involved with learning different types of meditation. That's probably, if I can at least do, I'll do 5 minutes a day on a short end. I might do 20 one day. I might do an hour-long guided meditation another day. It kind of really depends on how I'm feeling. If I'm having a really good kind of solid day, I'll do a little less. If I'm down and I don't have the energy to do a full seated silent meditation, I'll do a guided one where I'm lying down and I got the cat on top of me, comfort and letting the mind kind of go and get comfortable and relax, number one. But the gratitude side of that, there was a type of meditation that I got introduced to over these last few months called a loving kindness meditation, this is an interesting one from you can look up the exact process. I'll give you the shorthand of it. But the idea here is that you just sit, and much in the same way that you would pray for somebody, right? But loving kindness meditation, the model of it is that you wish somebody well. And so you wish them health, you wish them safety, especially in these times. You wish them freedom from suffering, and you wish them love. And you just repeat that over and over and over again for somebody you really care about. So I'll pick my mom and I'll send, or to my sister or to my dad, right? And I'll send my loving kindness. Then you do it kind of no, but not really. So you do it for that person, for me, it might be, that person at the office that I walk by every time at lunch, and we just kind of say, I'm like, you know what? I know Joanne, but I don't know her, but I'm going to give her some loving. I'm going to throw some good vibes her way. And then the last part is the toughest part, but this is where the most growth comes into. The last part is you do the exact same thing with the exact same degree of authenticity to somebody that you don't like or actively dislike for whatever reason, or somebody you're still holding a grudge onto from way in the past. And you do the same thing. And that type of, that's not one I do every single day. I've had very intense moments there where you're breaking through this moment of maybe it's somebody who harmed you in the past in some way. It's not forgiving, even if you're okay with that, but it's at least saying, you know what, I acknowledge you as a human being, and I'm going to give you what good energy I have, because that's what I want to put out there. And it does some trippy things to your brain. And I've gotten done with that with like chills and like just feeling good for myself just by putting that type of stuff out there with my intentions. And I just love that idea of doing that either for teammates, for people who are ill, but also for that challenging bit, the part where the growth is really that individual where it's tough for you to do that. So can you really wish your enemy well, right? Like that is one of the most impactful meditations that I've been introduced to over the years.
Gordon, I totally agree with you. And being a Detroiter and working at 6 Mile McNichols, you get to see a lot of negativity and a lot of rough stuff. And you get to meet some people in the neighborhood around campus that have been through some pretty rough things. And the thing that I notice about Detroiters that I try that all the kids that come in from the suburbs and around the country that go to Detroit, the thing that has affected me over 12 years that really I think is one of our why I love the kids so much and is culturally one of the things that's really happened is I think the kids really understand, and it's a Detroit thing because it's just been beaten on so long, that your opponent and adversity brings the best out of you, right? So the thing that is the hardest thing for you to do, the person that's treated you the worst, the person that has made you be the best you can be. And it's a really special thing that we have that is part of our environment and part of the thing that we take from the city the most, and is really a cultural thing. And it's one of the things that keeps me there and keeps me in that neighborhood and keeps me so dedicated to it. So your meditation is a great thing, and it's amazing when you see a whole neighborhood of people that have kind of adopted that philosophy.
Well, it's teamwork in and of itself. What is that? It's people from disparate backgrounds coming together for a common goal. So the more that you can practice that, the more likely you are going to get at or near that success point, whatever that you choose to make that to be. But I also want to hit up the bit of for me it's the now not having been able to compete and like I put an error factor into what I do now, and it's very unpleasant for me to do this. But there's some very interesting podcast to listen to was one on ologies. A woman named Allie Ward runs a great list of ologies, and she goes into the study of just anything that's a study of something else. So she interviews experts across a wide range of things, and they did one on fear and this interesting one on procrastination. And this one guy said is like, it's not that you can't be 100% perfect. That's never going to happen. But if you get to 80% and you have a 15% error factor in there, that should be considered a hittable goal all the time to be able to hit that. And so that's why I kind of factor in, like, I got these 5 things I want to do every day. I'm not going to beat myself up if I don't get to all of them, right? I'm going to shoot for my 80%. And that's been, it's a lowering of a goal in a sense, but it's also it's much more realistic. And I think that's one of the things that I'm teaching kids. Like I did one talk in my old high school, and I did workshops. They gave me a classroom just to like have kids come in, and we talk about different cognitive biases and distortions and ways in which to think. And this one girl told me, she maybe 15 or so, she goes, maybe you guys can relate to this, to how kids are in terms of the pressure they're feeling on or off the field. And she goes, if I don't get an A on this assignment, I'm not going to get into a good college. If I don't get into a good college, I'm not going to get a good job. If I don't get a good job, I'm not going to get paid anything. If I don't get paid anything, I'm going to die homeless on the street. And all that happens within, a half second of just thinking, whoo, suddenly we move from you're this live, vibrant individual to I'm dying all because I didn't hit this, very, very tiny point way up at the top here that I set as the only acceptable goal. It's being able and teaching kids, and also I've had to learn this thing. Awesome. Great. But what else, where are some more intermediary steps that I can be okay with getting to that? Or what is forward progress? Is it leaps and bounds, or is it a half inch maybe one day and 3 inches the next, and then maybe I get a foot the next day? Cool. And then I'm back to one. All those things of being okay with that and checking in with myself and saying, like, how do I feel right now? I feel pretty crappy that I didn't get outside and go exercise. Okay. Am I going to wallow in that? Am I going to beat myself up about on that? Am I going to tell myself I'm a bad person, or that I'm a bad teammate, or that my opponent's getting better? Or am I going to say, okay, you know what? I'm upset. That's a negative reinforcement. It's okay to be upset. I think I failed myself, but you know what? I'm still human, and I'm still breathing, and I can do this tomorrow, or I can just go down, or I can just get 5 minutes of wall ball in now. Like that type of mentality where it's much more focused on the scaffold of getting up to the very top, as opposed to this straight line.
Yeah. And it really, one of the quotes that I've been focusing on really over the last, year, coming up and almost a year and a half is, if there's no enemy within, then no enemy outside can do us harm. And really what you're talking about is that, because that's what I think the kids struggle with. I think adults, everybody struggles with that, where you beat yourself up, right? If that play does, play to play in lacrosse, that one opportunity that attackman had to score, he's in tight and he fires it wide, or he hits the post, or whatever it is. And that mental comes down on him, and you're thinking about that play that happened, 2-3 plays ago. And that, it's really just a microcosm for what these kids, I think, face in the way that they think a lot in life, as you just mentioned with that example that you had.
Well, there's a reason we have, in the officiating world, especially if we're coming from like trying to get lacrosse players into officiating, we love goalies. We love them for 2 reasons. Number one, they see the whole field, and they're used to seeing everything in the big picture bit. So we can give them the different views we need as an official. Number two, they have short memories, or at least the good ones do.
Yep.
So they have the most practice of all the players of having to deal with an immediate failure or an immediate setback and getting right back onto that horse. And I'd say go a little bit further on what you said earlier about one of my favorite quotes by Friedrich Nietzsche is, "He who has a why can bear almost any how."
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And we are in a midst of how right now. But if we've got a why, okay, so what's our why? Is our why to become a little bit, where are my skills deficient? Or what do I want to work on a little bit here? Is it my left hand? Is it my speed and agility? Is it my turnaround, shot, whatever? Is it playing from X? Okay, we got cones, or you got gloves, and you put them out and you do some work, right? And you try to isolate these things. That the best thing about this right now is that we've got a lot of time, and the worst thing about this is we've got a lot of time. And so it's just how can we best make use of this? And I love the one gentleman I was listening to had a good point. It kind of hit me because I've always been big on time management. He was like, "We don't manage time. That's false. We manage ourselves." And if we can learn to do that at a younger and younger age, the more likely we're going to have more success as we get older, or as teams certainly as we get older too.
Everybody's got 24 hours in a day. What you do with that 24 hours is up to you.
Exactly. But the tough thing is how are you doing that when it's certainly on my end, I went and I just did martial arts when I was 15 through 18, and that was my antidepressant. Because I didn't know I was depressed or had anything going on. I just knew I had awful thoughts, and this was the one place that made me feel better, and the people around there that made me feel better. But how can you use lacrosse or use your other hobbies, your other interests, your social connections as well? Because the kids are certainly more connected with one another and everybody else than we ever could hope to be. I know certainly me when I was their age, I didn't have a couple hundred followers on an Instagram account or something, or whatever TikTok is. I officially feel old now that I don't know what a tech thing craze is. So
yeah, I agree.
But the question on that is I'm less interested in. So I view coaches very much as, again, I go back to the fighting aspect of this, is everybody needs a corner man. Everybody needs somebody who isn't getting punched to tell them what's going on and better ways in which they can do the next round, right? So like my therapist, you know, I'm on teletherapy now, and which is interesting. It's workable, right? I mean, we got the technology for it.
Yep.
But she is my corner person. She's the person who I can unload a lot of like stuff, and I'm in the pocket trying to like and I'm isolating and I'm not doing things I'm supposed to be doing. And she can was like, well, have you talked to any of your friends recently? And I can go, no. Have you been eating well? No.
Sleeping?
Outside? No. I'm like, okay, well, what's one of these factors at least that we can change that today that will impact tomorrow a little bit?
Yep.
And we're doing the same thing for teams. You know, I generally know which team is going to have the better day just based on the warm-up and how guys are talking to each other.
Right.
And that is the bigger sign for me of the team that's got it together and the players that have bought in and the coaching philosophy that is permeated through all this. That takes work, that takes time, but it also takes guys giving effort on their bad days.
Any advice that you would, you know, we kind of mentioned how so many of these coaches that we know and that we've, you know, dealt with or, you know, friends with, they're now finding themselves to be more counselor than coach over the last few weeks and going forward. Any advice for them or tips, tricks, warning sign? I guess I don't know what to ask, but I know that because I get texts from my buddies that are coaches that watch this and go, can't believe you brought that up, or, you know, there's a little bit of tough love in there. But we get a lot of compliments as well. Is there anything that you would say to any of these coaches about keeping track of their players or proactively reaching out or you know, should they do something like this? Guys, every morning, get your butts out of bed by this time and get this exercise in, or you know, still trying to proactively coach them up.
I think that certainly fits into, you know, each coach's style and what the kind of the team philosophy is for so are we talking more of like if we're concerned about an individual as to whether or not they're at a danger to themselves or to somebody else, or that they're just in a really rough place mentally, just or where you want me to go with that?
I guess I don't know. And I don't think a lot of the coaches know yet because it's still so fresh for so many of us where, hey, Mom, we're on spring break, kind of, sort of, you know, I don't know. My kids are 10, 9, and 4. So for them, it's almost like spring break.
My philosophy right now is I think you have to do just as much communication, and as Gordon had his friend that said, how can I help? I think right now in our little team app, I try to put something funny, and then I try to put and then I make sure that every time I said, I'm here if you need me.
There you go.
And some people have reached out to me and we've gone into additional help. Other people have not said anything. Other people have talked about school. Other people have talked about the NCAA eligibility. I just am making sure that I am reminding them every day that I am here for them, and that and if they need me, I'm available. And I think that's all really any coach can do right now, because there's just so much that we don't know, and you don't want to, you don't want to do too much where it's cheesy, or you're making them do meetings that they don't want to do, just like some of the I'm sure people in their corporate jobs with their Zoom meetings that John Losey sits on all day.
Oh, yeah.
Some people want to be there, some people don't.
That's why I gotta have the background. I gotta have the background. That's because I'm on meetings all day long. I don't leave this office. So
Again with the background.
So I think if kids know that you're there for them, and they believe that you're there for them, as long as you keep reminding them with how can I help, or what can I do for you today, or if you need me, I'm here. I think that's the best thing a coach can do, in my opinion. Not that I
no, and
know
that's
anything.
I really think that's wonderfully said, and is the sentiment that I think that if that could be the bedrock from where people approach this problem, or this just a situation that we're dealing with, more good things are going to happen than not. So I'll certainly start like that baseline. Ooh, yeah, I'm all on board. One of the things that didn't make it into that article, two things. First one is that my friend Ben, and I learned this a year ago. So after I had done my talk at my old high school, we did a luncheon with some of the teachers, and Ben kind of hosted a Q&A. My friend was Ben, who helped me out when I was suicidal for the first time. And what I didn't know was that he was part of the peer leadership group at the school. And the week before I had disclosed this to him, he had gone through an early version of suicide prevention strategies and techniques for friends.
Wow.
And for years, yeah.
It was, I mean, that was it. I mean, he did that. In my mind, I automatically go, that happened for him, for you.
Yeah. And I was struck dumb in the lunch, because this whole, I operated for 15 years. I was like, no, Ben just kind of intuitively knew what to do. No, he learned a skill of how to deal with somebody in a crisis situation. And I'm like, whoa, there's some power there, number one. It's one of the reasons. So I'm a field advocate for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So it's the AFSP.org, which has, if anybody's worried about somebody's potential to harm themselves or to harm other people, and we're talking about suicide, or we're talking about severe acts of self-harm or the potential for that, that's a phenomenal resource for anybody looking to get educated on warning signs and what to do in this crisis, right? So right now, again, like the floor has been raised closer to the massive stress ceiling overhead with this situation. It just has, and we're all managing it as we can. It trips the brain, the sympathetic nervous system on there. So fight or flight is always going, right? And that's the challenge in any sporting event. The coaches, whether or not they realize it or not, when they're going from practice, what they're trying to do, practice to game, is they are trying to teach kids how to think logically with their prefrontal cortex amidst stress and physical activity and the fight or flight. Because what actually happens is that the amygdala turns on, your body is flooded with cortisol whenever you're running, chasing, whatever, high stress environment. Your prefrontal cortex stops working as effectively. And you literally get dumber. You can't think long term as well. And that's what every practice really is getting kids exposed a little bit at a time to a fight or flight reaction and realizing that they have some measure of control over how they respond to it. Mm-hmm. When somebody's in crisis, okay, and I liken this to, so in my talks, I'll say, okay, to the high school kids in the room, like, somebody's in crisis, right? What's going on in their brain? As far as their brain is concerned, a tiger or a lion has just burst into their living room and is ready to devour them. And they can't run and they can't fight, but that's all they want to do. And that's just playing on a loop in their head over and over. Where kids and adults will go, and I've gone to self-harm and to suicide. So it's where you can start building in time, asking, how can I help? Are you planning? Do you have a plan to hurt yourself or hurt somebody else? Asking specific questions in that bit. That is the empirically studied national recommendations from the AFSP and the National Alliance on Mental Health or Mental Illness, NAMI, saying, if you can ask people specific questions, number one, get them to say, and that answer might not be anything, and that's an answer too. But that is starting to give time in this crisis. And in the same way that right now we're having to use all this amount of time and trying to fill it, what we want to do in a crisis situation where someone's saying, I want to hurt myself or I don't want to be here anymore, is to give them time from that thought under supervision to when we can get them to help. That's the idea. So it's ask specific questions, stay with that individual, and get that person to expert help.
Yeah, and just to add on this, and I know we're bumping up against it a little bit, but you know, you talk about all those things going on with the brain, and you've got a wide range. You've got college players, you've got high school players we're talking about, you got coaches. And one of the things that I saw on your page, and one thing that I've struggled with, and I think, you know, most people do at times struggle with, is alcohol. And that's one thing on your page is saying no alcohol. So when you talk about those scenarios, right, and we got kids out there that, you know, are trying with alcohol. And I think about it, okay, here's where we are, they're at home with their parents, but then you got college kids that are home too. And then what happens when this whole thing ends and people go back out? You know, and can you talk a little bit about, and I know you could spend a lot of time on it, but how alcohol plays in negatively, the depression piece? That's one thing that I just never got when I was going through what I was going through. I'm running from my problems, but really I'm just bringing more problems by trying to run away from them through alcohol.
Yeah, it's twofold, and it's one of the so I've even a couple of months ago, I tried to have a couple of drinks with a friend of mine, and then the next 3 days were awful. They were my brain was shot.
0 for 5, 0 for 5, 0 for 5 on your checklist, right?
Exactly, and that's exactly what it looked like. And then my therapist was like, "Well, let's see how far back we can track this." Oh, you had 3 drinks, and that's too much for you. Like, that's just not. And it's like I had a good buzz. And I enjoyed myself, and that was fine. But then I had these 3 days of baggage that I had to deal with as a result of that, and it just, the cons outweighed the you know, the enjoyment of it. But that's why it's I'm very much onto this thing. It's like, I am already depressed enough. I do not. But the weird thing for me is it trips another bit. Most people, I'm not sure that I'm unique in this situation, but for me is my anxiety over the next few days will increase significantly, and that will paralyze me. I won't get anything done. I won't be able to get out of my bed. It's not because I'm depressed. It's my brain is still back in that fight or flight, all because I wasn't wise with one decision that I made. And that, I think it's important, number one, that I can disclose that like, hey, you know, I've still lived with this lesson. I picked that up when I was, you know, I learned that lesson at like 22. Like, alcohol and me just do not mix well. And I've learned that lesson on and off. I'm like, can I really try it? You know, a glass of red wine? Okay. 2 days later? Okay, no. And I just had to come to terms with that. The unfortunate thing, certainly kids are going to experiment with alcohol. I know I certainly did. And they're going to make poor decisions because they don't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex. So they're not thinking as long-term, and they're thinking that immediate short gratification. And our job as coaches, as educators in any capacity, is to lengthen out their viewpoint on what it is that is good for them. And, you know, if I could have a beer every now and again, I would, but I can't, because it just does not work well into my brain. And I just had to come, you know what, that's just how I'm wired. And some are going to be wired a little bit differently, but for me, for my health, and more importantly, for how other people care about me, I don't feel good when I go off the radar for 3 days and worry my parents and my friends and my crewmates or whatever. That is not a good feeling for me. That's not something I want to maintain. So not only for myself, but it's also for others. And sometimes it's like, it's that other push of realizing, you know what, I'm not really always doing this just for me. I'm gonna not do this thing for other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do it for the people that helped you get to where you are.
Yeah,
that's a big focus of mine. I mean, again, we and I could talk forever, so I'm going to stop after this one. But you know, the thought process I have is that, you know, if I'm not here tomorrow, how am I going to be remembered? How are my kids going to remember me? How is Chris Colin? How are the people out there watching me? I mean, you know, how am I going to be remembered, and how I conduct myself? If I can do, you know, things the right way on that given day, and at the end of the day, I can look myself in the mirror and say, I gave the best John Losey I could possibly give, then I'm good.
Yeah.
All right, Chris Drew,
Losey and I've had that conversation for hours and hours and hours for both of us. So we help each other out.
Yeah, exactly. He and I are there for each other. All right, Chris Drew, and I'm done. That's it.
No, that's, you know, and I think in a day and
Proud of you, Losey, for talking about it.
Hey, I got nothing to hide. If I can help one person, if one person can listen and hear something, I'm always open. I mean, I really have tried to take everything I've learned from myself. And yes, at 49, it's never too late to try and put that into practice and help anybody I can. So that's why I'm really interested, Gordon, in what you've done and how you've gotten it, where really it's kind of your second career, your second thing. Because I've thought about that too. Inking Johnson out of Atlanta, I've followed him. I got to meet him, and he's been a great resource for me too. So it's been great.
I'm just shocked you're only 49. That's really the only thing for me.
Nice.
Gordon, let's get a little bit lighter here at the end of this. Are you a Dale Hall guy? Do you like Dale Hall?
Oh, Dale and I have done. He was as almost as bad as an original mentor as you could get. I did my very first NCAA game with Dale.
Oh, nice. He was my first one of my first coaches. So
no kidding.
Very
special. Call tomorrow. It's a good Dale Hall story because this will be a fun little anecdote. I'm down in Tampa a couple years back. We're doing this U15. This is a massive tournament. We're doing this U15 semifinal or something. And he and I are on the field, and we're always messing with one another and giving each other grief and whatnot. But we always had a blast on the field, right? Just great times. And I'm lead, he's lead, I'm single, so I'm on the far side of the field. The play rotates up to the high crease. He rotates up to get a better angle on it, and I kind of naturally do the opposite of our mechanic. I went down and covered the goal as a single side. And whereas usually we do that when he's going below the goal. And so kid shoots, scores, and I don't really think anything of it. I just blow my whistle and put my hands in the air. And Dale comes over as I'm getting the ball out of the net. And he goes, "Don't you ever take my goal signal away from me." I was like, "Really? Just don't ever do that." And he's smiling with it, so I know he's just busting my chops with it. I'm like, yeah, all right, go face off. And so we go face off. I'm now as the lead on the regular side of the field, or the near side. Play goes down one way. We have a fast break. I'm running my way down to the goal line. Dale is single side. He's at the midfield line. There's a shot, goal. I don't even have a second to put my whistle in my mouth. Dale is running from the midfield line just with the goal, and he's just signaling that, looking at me the whole time. And I'm like, all right, yeah, okay, 1 for 1.
Hey, Mac. Yeah. Well, hey, we always say we want to keep these around an hour, so we're a little bit over an hour, which I'm okay with. But I did want to share a couple of things real quick. As always, I say that this is editorial. This is Chris and John and Chris. We're not claiming to be the official representatives of U.S. Lacrosse or U.S. Lacrosse Michigan. If this is the official policy of anything, this is just 3 guys talking about lacrosse. As I am the president of the place, I guess I am leaning on the USL brand to kind of put it out there. I am going to share, let me make sure I'm sharing the right stuff here.
A lot of tabs open.
Yeah, well, I did find Gordon has his mental agility page on Facebook. Can you guys see that right now?
Yep, we see it.
So it's facebook.com/mentally agile. Gordon doesn't do a lot on Twitter, but he does post almost kind of like a blog on his Facebook. And it's kind of
on Twitter now, though.
What's that?
I'm on Twitter now, though. Mentally Agile GC.
Okay. So go follow him there. Other things that are out there. We were talking about stuff that's free and available. Jamie Monroe has his virtual lacrosse summit coming up. If you go to lacrossevirtualsummit.com, he's got a free week-long 20 different speakers that he's putting out there. It's PLL coaches, it's college coaches, it's MLL, it's everybody in between. So if you either go find Jamie Monroe on Facebook, he's sharing it all there, or I can put this link in there. What I will do as well, when I post this YouTube on our Facebook, I will share the link for the afsp.org website. And make sure that if there's any tools in there, Gordon, just to keep it a little bit serious, when you first posted your article, I remember reaching out to you because there's a good friend of mine from college, and she has had issues, and she's had suicidal thoughts and stuff. And I've had to say to my wife, I'm not having an affair behind your back, but if my phone rings in the middle of the night and it's her, like, here's all of our text messages. Like, I'm one of her safe word people. Like, I'm always there for her. I've been there for her for years. And my wife knows if it's late, who are you texting with? Stefani's having a bad night. I shouldn't have said her name, but yeah, it's just something that I'm one of her people, that I'm there for her. So the group text that I've got going with John and with Chris, the group text I've got going on with my buddies, I think a lot of this just kind of checking in there and being for each other can be really good. And what we find on the afsp.org page, I'll make sure I share there in the comments. I talked to a friend of mine today who has a group of girlfriends. She's a chiropractor, and they actually have safe words with each other right now, where they have a couple friends that are home kids, everything else, and they just know that if the day's that bad and they need somebody to talk to, they can just say in the group text, whatever the words, Oklahoma, and somebody knows that they need to get on the phone with her right away. So checking on each other, take care of each other. Again, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, join US Lacrosse. We had our last episode, Gordon, with a coach from the Ovid LC program, which is, learning more about a rural mid-Michigan program when we're all from the Oakland County hotbed of Michigan lacrosse. Was really good. And again, I'd like to say that I would not be friends with Gordon or have a relationship with Gordon or be the ref I am or a lot of the things I have if it wasn't for US Lacrosse and me taking advantage of coaches education or coaches development programs, the Laredos, getting to be a US Lacrosse certified observer and trainer. It was all based on when Gordon was running the show there. So as Chris mentioned in the last episode, if you've ever been one of those people that says, well, I don't even know what my check goes toward, what does my membership even do for me? It's for a lot of things. US Lacrosse is really a great place for camaraderie, friendship, professional education, support, all that kind of good stuff. Two more quick things, Gordon. I want to make sure I share this with you. Fender.com, as in Fender Guitars. Go to fender.com/play. While everyone is under quarantine, they have turned over their entire guitar online lessons for free. There's a free trial, and I don't know if the free trial is for, I think it's 3 months that they're going to give to anybody that wants to learn how to play. So, Chris, I don't know if you're a Fender.com guy or a Fender guy. I know you play bass. I don't know what type of bass you play, but it's there and it's available, Gordon. So that's, for you.
Awesome.
Higgins is going to be so mad at you.
Who is?
Higgins is going to be mad at you. I have a Watt Plower.
Oh, okay, because I didn't know what bass you had.
Come on.
All right. To wrap
Nate
this
Toledo,
up,
man.
Gordon, if you're ever in Detroit, you got to come find us. John and Chris and I definitely need to take you out for dinner and catch up with you. If we want anyone to get a hold of you, we're going to push into mental agility. We'll tag you in all the stuff we do on social. Anyone has questions for Gordon, I assume I'm not overreaching by saying you've always been open to talk about this. You've always been open as a friend and a resource. So if anyone heard something that we talked about tonight, tweet at you, Facebook at you. They can probably find your email still on the US Lacrosse website, and you've always been one to help people.
Yeah, I'm doors always wide open. My new email, if you want to throw that out there, is gcorcetti@mentallyagile.com, and that'll come straight to me, and from there, I'm either happy to answer what questions that I have the capacity to answer, and when I don't, I'll be honest with you and direct you to the best resources that I know about.
Perfect.
Yeah. And one of the things real quick, Gordon, too, that I had a couple of notes going into this because people were interested when we put out there on the schedule was, if there's things, and we can do this offline, resources that coaches, a couple of coaches reached out to me, are there any resources that they can use online that you might recommend to pass on to their kids or for their coaches or anything like that? So maybe we can get some websites or resources that we could post out there on that topic.
If Chris goes to my website and under tools, there's a section just for high school students.
Okay.
I also have one for working professionals. I think I might have to.
Yep, I'm on here right now too. So okay, cool.
Yeah, so the high school one, that's just specific to, and that's straight from conversations I'm having with kids about what they're having. So I'm trying to break out more libraries.
Yeah, one-stop shop, perfect. That's what I wanted to hear.
All right, so I want to leave this on a light note. Pete Bluevell is a buddy of ours from Columbus, Ohio. He's an official. He's an ILOA NCAA guy. Pete has been all over Chris and I on social media for when does he get to be a guest? When does he get to be a guest? And we keep telling him it's a Michigan only podcast. But I did want to share my Pete story. So when I did that Laredo down in Columbus, this should share. I got picked to be on the All-Star game. So this is my entire Laredo class.
That was a good clinic, man. Those were some good – man, that was a good one.
Good guys, good
picture.
teams, good facilities, good hosts. So this is Gordon right here in the white shirt. The guy next to him in the blue shirt is Mike Infantino. And so it's me, Troy Zaccaro. You guys might know his dad's the head coach at Sterling Heights Stevenson. He now lives in Baltimore. And a guy that actually went to Ann Arbor Pioneer but now lives in Carmel, Indiana, named Ken Takazawa. This is Ken in the front row here. The three of us get named to the All-Star game, and we're all pumped and excited. And, hey, we got picked as the three best of the best, and we get to go out there in this game. So Infantino is walking us into the stadium, and we're going through the tunnel that the football players come out. And, I mean, you're walking into this horseshoe, and it is enormous, and it is daunting. And Infantino is just, like, slapping us on the backs, like, guys – what a great weekend. This was so much fun. You guys were the best. Hey, everybody else is going to go sit in the stands and watch you guys go out and do everything you learned. We're so proud of you. I just want you guys to relax and have fun. Just don't worry about people watching. Don't worry about it. You learned all your stuff. Relax, and you go out there and you have fun. So we get done with that whole pep talk from Infantino, and we get our picture taken right in the middle of the field in front of the big screen and everything. And right as we're about to go out for the opening face-off, somebody goes, hey, Pete wants to talk to you guys. Blavel? Yeah. All right, sure. So we walk over, and Pete, he's all presents. So we walk over, like, hey, Pete, you wanted to see us? He stands up, takes his sunglasses off, and goes, this is going to be an effing bloodbath. You guys are in for the time of your life. These two effing teams hate each other. These two effing teams have had fights. They vandalize each other's schools. You guys need to keep this game under. Well, whoa! Like, we just went from Infantino telling us puppy dogs and roses and uniforms. And
have fun.
These two teams have had knife fights in the parking lot before the game. Like, it is just the most flip the script. It was a very physical, not really even chippy game, but just the fact that I had the dichotomy of Infantino teasing us and everything's great and everything's rosy, and then Pete just comes in the turd in the punch bowl and just, you guys are going to die out there, fire and brimstone, and they hate each other and vandalism and violence, and it's like, whoa, what do we do? What are we going to do now? The game went well. We got our little picture after the game with Pete. It was a good time, but every time I see Pete, he's done a couple of Chris's games over the years, I just want to go up to him and go, hey, these two teams hate each other. They absolutely hate each other. You're in for a battle.
Knife fights in the parking lot. That's what I like to see. I mean,
yeah. So, and it was like two Catholic school teams anyway from Cincinnati or something. I don't remember. But, so that's my Pete story. So to wrap it up, guys, stay safe.
Yep.
Stay healthy. As always, text, tweet, call, whatever. Gordon, thank you again so much for coming on. We really appreciate you taking your time to do this and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your story.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gordon.
My pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me, and be well out there.
So I'm going to stop recording, but we always just kind of have a good one. See ya.
See ya.